Welcome to Conscious Dominance, a DSRX studio production. These weekly conversations explore how to approach mindful leadership and inner dominance within the powerful container of committed, intentional relationships. Join Eric as he invites new dialogues, sharing practical insights for how the craft of consciousness opens the aperture to love, serve, and connect with unwavering presence.
Welcome back to Conscious Dominance. This is part 2 of our exploration of conscious discomfort. I'm Eric. This is Rachael. Last week we talked about women's hidden pain and how men can do better. Now, I want to speak a bit and have Rachael speak a bit about the artistry of this dynamic, about the craft of it. This isn't just something where we just endure pain and create more work. There's a way to do it better. The conscious craft of transforming discomfort into growth is something that you can only learn by the doing of it, by bringing conscious awareness to it. And for everyone, it's going to look different. For us, we have a certain way that we go about doing it. For you and whoever's listening, you get to choose how you want to go about doing this. In the last episode, Rachael, we talked about one of your quotes that I love, that is to care without caring. But what's interesting about that quote is I think that so often women get stuck, and I agree.
Feeling the burden.
They're feeling the burden of it. But I actually think this is one of those places where it's not equal. I actually think men need to feel the burden. I think we have to feel the weight. We have to feel the pain. This is how we transform. From a DS perspective, I want to be the conscious person who's saying, I choose that pain and not that pain. That's, in a way, that's what's behind all of this. Is my goal is to give you less pain now because you've been in a lifetime of holding intensity and of holding unseen discomfort. So my job right now is really to be the one who chooses the dosage of it, how much I'm going to take it away or give to you. And that becomes the pleasure. And so how does that become something that's pleasurable and not depleting? What I've found is that my relationship with pain and struggle is an intimate relationship. I find that when I am able to embrace my pain and my struggle, I'm able to transform myself, and that's how I transform myself, and that's how I grow. And I want your pain to be part of that intimate relationship that I have. Is like your pain becomes mine to be able to dose out or not to have. And so one of the big differences, I think, with men and women is that I have seen, as I've studied hormones and I've really done a deep dive into this, is that for men, pain and struggle helps testosterone, whereas with feminine hormones, too much pain really is detrimental. And so many women right now, they're in chronic fatigue, it's chronic overload. And so the necessary thing is to actually take some of that away, to bring them into a space where they can get out of fight or flight, get into a place of attunement, get into a place where your nervous system is regulated, that becomes this baseline that I'm working to bring you to. It means that this becomes the first order of business when we're in this space. So when women are carrying so much of this pain and this responsibility, that is what puts women in their masculine. It is by definition what it means to be a man, and to be in your masculine is to take responsibility. So if I want to put her more in her feminine and less in her masculine, I need to take away some of her responsibility, right? So this is where the caring matters. And this is where the emotional weight matters. It's about taking the responsibility of her pain and struggle and understanding what's behind it. And this is something that is a process. It doesn't happen overnight.
I thought it was really powerful in the last episode that we said that men tend to see relationship as a place of comfort and solace, and women tend to see relationship as a place of responsibility and caretaking.
Mm-hmm. Like to actually get me more in my masculine is to be more in a place of duty, in a place of taking responsibility, which means pushing up against the parts of me that's like, hey, I don't feel like doing that right now. No, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do it anyway. How do I allow her not to be in a space where she's plowing through and doing things even when she doesn't feel like it? Because I think most women are actually really, really good at being men. And what I mean by that is they're really good at taking responsibility and doing things that they don't feel like doing. They've been trained to do this. And so
We've been praised.
praised to do it. And because most men want to relax when they're around you and just chill and let you be the one of service. And so one of the things that we've done that's really practical, really easy, is we travel a lot. And we've said it before, but I'll say it again. I think it would be a great experiment for people, is that I physically carry things. And that's a way for me to take on more responsibility. It's very clean, it's very clear, and it's obvious what to do. And it makes our transitions a lot smoother, and it puts you in a lot more of a relaxed, feminine space. And that's one experiment. It's very practical. Just try it for 30 days.
I think that was so impactful.
Yeah, I saw you in your chronic physical pain, and I was just stop.
Also in my chronic physical doing. And
Yeah, exactly.
I've been conditioned to just do and do and do. And when Eric and I first met, I had been living alone for a very long time. And I think that it was powerful for me to notice once in a partnership that was with a very competent person who was incredibly willing and very able and interested in taking on more and more responsibility inside of our life, really the responsibility of the relationship itself, which is essentially a pillar of DSRX. It was powerful. It was uncomfortable because I found, of course, like many of you may relate to, I found myself as a woman feeling a tight grip in my hands and a bracing, and in other words, a controlling nature, that whether I acted on that controlling impulse or I just witnessed it inside of myself and felt the tension and discomfort of it, I kept being reminded that those were moments not where I preferred to be in charge over Eric, or that he was not competent or he couldn't be trusted, but rather kept helping me ask myself, where am I not being considered here? Is my anxiety actually that I want to be in control, or is my moment of feeling the tight grip that I don't feel like I'm being fully understood or received, or that the entire context of the many decades that I've been by myself and taking great care of myself, have those needs and nuances been considered, whether they were considered by me or by Eric? So there was a narrative inside of me of I have to do this and this and then this, and I was saying yes to too many things, too many people, without actually considering my energy levels, especially knowing I'm a neurodivergent person, a very highly sensitive being who over the years really found the ways that help me stay steady in my nervous system. And the only way that I could express or share these nuances is by letting someone know me, by giving them more information. And I would have to let people in. Now, this was a huge edge for me when first coming into really any relationship, but especially this particular one with somebody I love so dearly and want to be with in the long term, that it's been the most life-changing journey inside of this dynamic, because I've always been secretive and mysterious, not intentionally, but it's the place where I find the most comfort. I don't want people in my business trying to get me to do something. And it never occurred to me until I met Eric that anyone would ever be willing to truly get to know me and to understand and get into the nuance of who I am and what makes me well and thriving and expansive. So it was a chicken and the egg moment when we first got together, that I would let him in a little bit, and he, as just a person external to me, would not weaponize that data or that information against me. That helped me see that I have an opportunity to share more next time because I wasn't hurt, because he didn't use that in a way that was detrimental. So I shared a little more, then a little more. So when a man or Eric may drop the moment, when he reacts, which is often, right, as he was learning, we're triggering each other and we're in this game, so to speak, I use my voice and I get a pushback from him, there's an important distinction for me to make as a woman, sensing that he is not being malicious or manipulative or moving information back around to use against me was an important distinction. Noticing that he may just be flooded by my storm or feeling overwhelmed, or he was in his own pain. So recognizing that weaponizing versus him dropping the moment, so different. You dropping me and weaponizing things that I share with you are completely different things. Dropping a partner is a moment of reactivity or loss of composure. And that's a moment of being in your feminine. As a man who, we are beings who will be in both poles. You're protecting your pain and really looking for me to protect you or to comfort you in that moment. So what's a woman to do? I mean, we experienced this just this weekend. I'm here to out feminine him. I actually am most comfortable in this domain, and this has been huge for me, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it. But for me to be more extreme, for me to be louder, for me to be demonstrative in the way that I can be in my storm, it gets his attention and it wakes him up. And it's not a conscious decision anymore. It naturally comes out of me like, no, this is my turn to be upset. You will not take this feminine pull from me today, mister. Like, this is so intense.
You're doing a good job with it.
Thank you. It's been a journey to be in a tantrum energy and to really be in my expression of my fuck no. And to have that be, sometimes playful, but even the playful will get his attention when he's unconsciously going into a reactive moment. And it's been really powerful to have us consciously say, like, this is okay. This is what's happening next.
I've been really grateful for the times that I've been reactive and that I've gone into my inner feminine, because it's given me great empathy and compassion for what it's like to be a feminine being, and to be aware that in those moments, all I'm longing for is for you to take care of me and to see me and to validate me. And I'm hungry for you to be aware of what I'm doing and what I'm about. And it's interesting that one of our commitments that we've done is that you will not give that to me. And what that's done is it's kept the polarity, because it's made it so that as soon as I get away from you and I know to leave, I'm able to do that for myself. And because I can do that for myself, I can do it for you. Mm-hmm. And I become my own artist. And so when there's an issue, I'm able to kind of navigate it with so much more authority and agency. What I realize too is when I'm below the line, I think that term, in the conscious leadership book, they talk about leading from above the line or below the line. And when we're below the line, we're often in this space where we can be more prone to reactivity. And what happens is that when a man is below the line, and I've learned this really from studying Om's work on chakras and its relationship to the masculine and feminine, I really appreciate that. He talks about the different chakras, and one of the chakras, the third chakra, is your sense of identity. And I think a lot about that because that's really where our power comes from. And when I'm below the line and you're stating something where you're struggling, the other day you're struggling with time and feeling like you didn't have enough time, and you're struggling with some other things, I took all that in, and I hadn't checked in with myself, and I was already kind of in a state that was not in a great state. And I took that as an indictment. Automatically, my body felt it, like I had failed in my power. I'd failed as a dom. I failed in this kind of way. And when I look back at all the times that I've been off with you, it's all been third chakra. It's like it immediately just goes to this place of feeling like I'm not in my identity. I've failed as a leader and I'm faltering. And it feels so painful to be in that. And Om speaks eloquently about how you have to change your identity and grow up in the maturation process. But my point, in as quick a way as possible, is that men need to mature. Men need to grow up. Every man needs to grow up. We all need to grow up. And the way for a man to grow up is to take responsibility for all of him. And the quickest way and the best way for that is to actually be faced with the responsibility of a woman and her reality and her truth. And so every relationship becomes an opportunity for the man to grow up. And this is all about bringing awareness to the fact that my model of what I identify as my power and my strength needed to expand and to have much more resilience and more vitality. And the only way to change the relationship I had with my third chakra was to change my identity. And so I had to die to my bullshit and then come back. And if I keep thinking I'm the dom, I'm the man, I'm the one in charge, I'm responsible, I hold on to these identities and then I fall short, I become so much more fragile. And so I have to get rid of these identities. And as I feel the pain of whatever you're bringing to me, I realize, oh, I'm still holding on to these identities and I'm judging myself. And I'm still in my left brain. I'm still in this part of me that wants to be logical and have all the answers. And I'm measuring myself. And I feel like I'm being punched in the stomach when you're just bringing up some random thing. And it's such a disproportionate response. And I think it's so much of why I'm so into being a dom too, is because I do have a lot of trauma from growing up in a religion as I did, where there is no place for my power or my assertiveness.
It's external.
It's all external. The power is external to myself. And so really reclaiming that and regaining that without letting it become something that's problematic has really been the journey of this entire podcast.
You mentioned before that Om Rupani says that men's domain is their first, second, and third chakra, and that women's domain is really the seventh, sixth, and fifth, and that we join in the heart center, the heart chakra, the fourth.
And what's interesting is that I always feel the pain in my lower three. I dismiss our connection in the upper three and that I'm like failing you in some way in the lower three. And when you're feeling off, like I said, I feel I'm not doing a good job. That's my go-to place.
Yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck? I was just talking about or sharing with him about my nephews, or yesterday I was saying, I don't have enough time to see all the people I love because I'm thinking about connection. I'm sharing, observing, and reporting what it was that I'm feeling. And he comes to me, oh, I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible leader. And it's so true that he went right into that foundational space with my flurry, took it right into the core. Or he'll take a core thing and I'll bring it right up into my flurry. And I don't say flurry to make it sound fluffy, but it is a different density. And I think that is, we go to the tarot of the Lover's card, that it's been pointed out in so many texts that the man standing in that couple is looking to the woman. He is the earth. He is the foundation. He is the one in charge of matter. And he's looking to her, who is the bridge between self-consciousness and superconsciousness, which is God, spirit, source. And she is the subconsciousness right in between. I think that's always such an interesting model, as he looks to her and she looks to the heavens, so to speak. She is more connected to those upper chakras, and he is the domain of the earth. And that really is true, because it is the lower chakras and the upper chakras responding to each other and meeting in that heart space, that the expectation mechanism, as Om speaks about, generates other expectations. And we can either choose to be right, or we can choose to be happy. We can choose to be right, or we can choose to be in connection.
I think that as far as choosing to be connected, it's so important to reframe the pain. That's one of the biggest things that I want people to understand, is the men get to know your pain, and for the women to be okay with their men in pain. It's so important to see that your pain and your attempts to avoid the pain are actually the biggest impediment to love and to intimacy. And so much of the things that we might be addicted to, we're really just not wanting to feel pain. The emotional pain, the psychic pain, physical pain, whatever it is, the insecurity. When I'm in my pain and I'm completely immersed in it, unconsciously or consciously, it's difficult for you to bring anything to me. You're not going to necessarily use your voice or criticize me or even bring up anything of truth, because you're like, oh, he can't handle that. He's burdened by that. And that's why I'm like, get better at holding your pain, because you can feel that that I'm overwhelmed. So she's not going to express her desire to me. She's not going to want to bring something that could be really fun, but she doesn't want to burden me with that because she sees that I'm in my shit, I'm in my pain. And I think so many relationships, they kind of stagnate because the man just can't handle, and he doesn't even know maybe that he's overwhelmed, but the woman's there, she's really fucking good. And she can assess, can I handle it or not? And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is not only do I need to take it away from you, but I also have to love taking it away from you. If I feel burdened by me taking it, you're not going to want to give it to me. So it's the energy with which I'm doing it is also primary. And so there's a little bit of a web that we have to untangle, that most women don't want to do this because it's too dangerous, because they've been so conditioned by men that are resentful or that are going to weaponize it, or like don't want to be this woman that's hysterical too much. So they've conditioned and contorted and changed themselves to be pain-free. The pain that men feel when we're being told the truth in these lower chakras and we start getting reactive, it's actually a beautiful thing to start happening, because that means that you're actually hitting a core place for them to do some work on themselves. And so when I started realizing, oh, wait, I can trust these triggers to teach me, it became such an incredible alchemizing place. And so if you at all perceive that there's difficulty, you're not going to necessarily bring that to me. Why would you want to bring more pain or more suffering? So what we're saying here is how important it is for the woman to be okay with the discomfort of me going through my discomfort. But if you didn't know that I'm actually in a discomfort that's a productive discomfort, you're not going to go there. And so that's why it's so important for these men, and why I've talked for a fucking year about this. It's like, take responsibility, learn how to not be reactive, hold, all the things that I've talked about. So what you get is women lying or
just muting or shutting down,
yeah,
or performing.
Because they don't want to burden the man, but there's no growth. There's no transformation, and there's no possibility of a true conscious DS relationship unless you do this.
Exactly. And this is where the practical system comes in, that these sustainable processes that you've talked about, and really redesigning the system or the foundation of the relationship is essential. What it is for us to decide together to go into the pain more consciously. Right now, there's a communication dilemma, as you were talking about, women walking on eggshells. And by the way, it isn't always just women, right?
This could go both ways.
So we have so many examples of couples that we work with and that we see intimately who have this flip-flopped, and it isn't incorrect to have it flip-flopped. But if there is a woman who has become much more dominant in the relationship, and a man has become so much more submissive, and we find that he is the one walking around on eggshells, having a communication challenge, isn't able to actually bring the truth to her or express anything because it triggers a huge defensiveness in her, that's equally relevant here, and actually much more common than most of us, I think, even consciously realize. But regardless, whomever is having the dilemma of walking around on eggshells, that defensiveness can come up. So we barely do it. We barely want to bring the voice forward because it will blow up the relationship, ruin the night, ruin the month, ruin the vacation. So it's either mouse or lion or nothing in between. Never wanting to be labeled as nagging was imprinted in me from a very young age. I remember standing toe to toe in an argument with a previous partner as he was calling his best friend's wife a nagging bitch. And that was coming up more than once. And I remember asking this person, what's the difference between nagging and what it is that I do? And he was so complimentary that I'm never nagging, that I'm so sweet, and that I'm so quiet, and that I'm so tender and gentle with my requests, and that this other woman was such a jerk because she was clear and direct and she yelled, and I was the sweetheart. And it stuck out in my memory, of course, because as I'm looking back, I'm thinking I was completely shut down. I was terrified of this man. His temper was extreme, and I had no defenses with it, and I was very afraid of his reaction. So It looked sweet, and I was putting on a wonderful front. I didn't even notice that I was doing it. I will be easier to get along with, and I will be more pleasing, and I will have more peace and enjoyment in my life. So if I had a request inside the relationship, I tiptoed around. Would you mind if would it be cool if every once in a while you did whatever tap dance I was doing there? And I was praised by him. I was praised by his friends. I was not liked by the wives, and I am still praised in that way by my own mother, and stories that she will say in a braggadocious way during dinner, that I never cried during traumatic moments during childhood, that I really never even had any needs, and I was such a great helper, and I was showing up in this extra vigilant way. And I took so much pride in that until I got wise and started to feel the cost of what that actually has brought to my body, to my physical pain, to the burdens that I carry. And in this way, because I didn't want to be a burden, I didn't want to be labeled as nagging, and I didn't actually want to feel disliked for asking for basic responsibility from the people around me.
Right, until you came to me. And then
So
I pointed it out.
Everything changed within the first week or month of us being together. I was
right, because
really brought to my attention.
Fundamentally,
Very grateful.
Fundamentally, I want to be of service. I want to be able to give. I want to be able to provide for you. And if you don't have any needs, what am I here to do? What am I here to provide?
This was groundbreaking.
And I said, if you got your shit together and you don't have anything, my role is not even here. But what's unique about us in our relationship is that you actually came to me for help. So from the very beginning, you were in a place where you showed some needs. But one of the things that I think is so interesting about this is that I saw that when you were a child, you had to be the caretaker of the adults around you. And so then you just kept becoming the caretaker for all the adults around you, all the men around you. So you just kept that going on and on and on. And so when we started working on our dynamic and really thinking about it, I was like, oh, another way of saying this is conscious dominance is saying, woman, stop being my caretaker. I'm going to be your caretaker. Who's in charge in a relationship between a parent and a child? The parent is in charge of the child. Who's the caretaker? The parent. Who's in charge in a conscious dominant relationship? The man. Who's the caretaker? The man. So then start being the caretaker. And it becomes really healing. And it becomes this great opportunity. And this is what we started playing out. And even if it is practical, like carrying things from the car for an entire month, it's a starting place,
That's moving that little needle.
It's moving the needle. It's also a practice where I tell her to carry one thing or not to carry, or I notice that your back's hurting, and really being directive and taking leadership. It's also noticing that you're going to go inside, but what to do once you go inside, because your proclivity is to go do more work and go do the laundry and keep yourself busy. And
but why?
Why? Because you don't want to feel the guilt of sitting there. Because like we were talking about the other day, we're with your family and all of the women were cleaning and all of the men were sitting. Like the men have no problem sitting. Whereas the women, they could not sit. Not all the women needed to be working, but none of the women could sit with the men.
Solidarity.
They had to be helping. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't sit there. They couldn't receive, because the women are in discomfort receiving. And I think it just shows the kind of reverse in the way we've gotten down this
story that we tell.
Yeah, exactly. For you, the discomfort that I'm asking you to feel is actually in the receiving. It is in the not doing. And that is discomfort. It's something I talked about in the last episode. Men need to step up. And women's discomfort is in the receiving and the discomfort of asking for what they need.
But I disagree with one little part of that, because I don't actually think it's the responsibility of the feminine to ask for what they need. With my clients, I ask them instead to share what they feel, that it really is the responsibility of the caretaker to figure out what the need is. In other words, the practical, tactical steps. When we think about needs, most people would agree that it's the food, water, shelter, but it's also the practical way, the desire or the craving or the swirl gets to come into form. And so it's a
responsibility and ability to respond to the moment and express or share or observe and report aloud, I don't like that. I want this instead, or this hurts. Or yesterday we were walking in some grass and I'm like, this is so itchy because I had sandals on and no socks. Eric had big tennis shoes and socks pulled up to his knees. He was not feeling the itchiness of the grass. So it's my responsibility to respond to that moment and say out loud, this is uncomfortable for me. That doesn't mean he needs to immediately execute and get out of the grass.
I didn't. I said, let's keep going.
No, he didn't. And I had tons of little bites around my ankles. But this isn't detrimental, and we laughed about it. But my job isn't to come up with solutions. So that feeling of knowing that my job as an adult who is leaning into being cared for in a relationship that is more equanimous, that I may see the solution, I may even suggest the solution, but I am not expecting the solution, and it isn't my job to provide the solution for our household or for any moment. I'm just here to report what I'm experiencing.
And speaking about reporting and experiencing, I remember there was a period where I was working at home, and so I was able to integrate a lot of this way that we live, the caretaking, rather smoothly. And then there was a period of time where I was doing some work outside of the home, and I was no longer as much the caretaker. And I got the report and the feedback that all of a sudden I sat around kind of expecting a little bit more from you, and I didn't prepave it. And all of a sudden I sort of like fell back into old patterns. And so for all you men out there that I know that have a long day and they're listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, the fuck, like I'm working all day and then I come home and what does she do? Like she should be hooking me up. What the fuck? Like, and I'm telling you, men, I don't care what your job is. I don't care how hard the work is. If you start playing the balance game, it's might as well get a guy as your roommate and play balance with him, because it's not about balance and about being fair. Remember, I said it's unfair. You want the unfair and the certain advantage of being the leader, then you need the unfair of taking responsibility. And part of taking responsibility is at the end of the day, when you come home, reframe it. It's going to be more painful. It's been a long day. The kids are going to be tired. She's going to be tired. Can you find a strategy and a way to navigate, to show up to those moments at the end of the day and to be better and to do better? And if you can nail these everyday little moments and these transitions and mealtime and bedtime and just treat them like a project you have at work that's a challenging thing. And if you can just spend a week or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks failing and trying and experimenting, then the rest of your life, you're going to have it down so much better. I know that's hard with kids because they change and they grow. And I know how hard for me, I was a single dad doing it. It was tough. But I can speak from experience that when I would come home and I was tired and I was exhausted, I figured it out, how to make it work and how to show up for them. And I just saw it as a reframing opportunity for creative ways to solve this. But I think one of the things that I hear from a lot of the women that are out there at home with their children, and then these men come home, it's like they have a third child. They want that woman to caretake them. And then they wonder why that woman doesn't want to fuck them at the end of the day, because it's like it throws the polarity off. And then this is what I'm trying to bring to the men out there, is that when you're in a place of receiving and she's the one hosting you, it's flip-flop. The polarity's off, the dynamic's off. And it doesn't make sense because we're so conditioned to receive feminine who's hosting us. We think we're in our masculine in that, but it's actually the other way around. And that's a mind fuck at first to kind of recognize that. If we can reframe and bring a new context to it, then that pain is not as bad. When you're part of a team, you're playing sports and you get injured, the pain doesn't feel nearly as bad as if it was a pain that was like from your parent to you or from a friend. That's a much more painful thing. It's also the same when you're doing a workout. It's not nearly as bad. There was a study that was really interesting where all these maids were noticing how much physical work that they were doing, and they were not enjoying it. And then it was at a hotel. And then they told those women, hey, count your steps. And by the way, you're burning all this calorie. And then they reframed, and then those women got stronger and lost more weight just because mentally they weren't resisting the whole time. So they were able to feel the benefits of the pain.
They weren't seeing it as work. They were seeing it as a workout. So they
Exactly.
were losing weight and like
Exactly.
getting all these extra
Exactly.
benefits from
And so
it.
that's the same way that I approach so much of the work that I do with you. I'm like, oh, this is steps, this is workout, this is, you're just reframing everything in your day to be of service. This pain's good for me. That's going to make me stronger. And I think it's really an important part of the whole DSRX model is this concept of reframing pain and to see pain in context and to see that the pain that's in your life, I want to be the one to bring that to you. I don't want life to bring that to you. I want to bring more consciousness to that. So one of the big parts of this is not to see you as this default oasis that I'm always going to, because what's going to happen is you're going to hide your pain and you're going to be in more pain because you're going to say, okay, I can't feel that in front of him. And all of a sudden you become my caretaker. And so we're just perpetuating the same thing. And I think that's really one of the big parts of this that I think is really helpful to kind of reframe the coming home and reframe the whole relationship in general, that I am the caretaker. You're not the caretaker.
You've also talked a lot about you feeling like a hero in
Yeah.
those moments, and that, because I'll say, why are you making 2 trips when you could just make 1 trip? I'm thinking of being so helpful and making this really obvious suggestion. He's like, because it makes me feel like a hero. Because it makes me feel like I'm the man when I do that for you. And I love that. It kind of softens me and helps me hush. Going back to something from earlier about the discomfort of being in more of a receptive space than ever before, you made it very clear that if you need assistance, if you need me to carry half of a heavy table or move something or back the car up or back up the trailer, that you will task it to me with clarity. And otherwise, it's none of my business. That has been so soothing, but I really had to learn to trust that, because I had to know that even when I saw you struggling, even if you're grunting, which you do a lot, or sweating or exerting obvious physical effort, that it's my job to not constantly be this voice of, can I help? Can I help you? Do you need help with that? Do you need da-da-da-da-da? Instead of just knowing that I can trust him, that he will ask for my assistance, and he does on rare occasion. And most of the time, I actually get to see him pick something really heavy up or be this sort of hero in that space. And when I'm cooking, I love to cook, and I don't do it often, but it really is like an art form. In fact, you said that I'm like a jazz musician when I cook. I love to get in the flurry and kind of get lost in the process of the art making. But you used to say to me, what can I do? What do you need? And it was hard in those moments, like, I don't know, like, figure it out. And that's what women do, is we just figure it out. A woman walks into a situation, we take a moment to get the contextual awareness. That is trash. I could throw that away. Oh, that trash is full. I could take that out. We're constantly in this place of observation of where we could be of assistance. And so now I witness Eric in this new mastery of not just attunement to my energy, but also in the attunement to the space that we're in, and the noticing, the awareness, the paying attention, and taking action to actually assist in what eventually became his obvious ways. It could be that while I'm, furiously playing in the kitchen, he could set the table. He could pour water for a guest, for example. It's been really powerful to notice him noticing. Doesn't require me to give him tasks or to make a list, that it's just kind of natural and obvious what our home needs.
I think it's really interesting when I'm in this space. I don't want you to do anything. I actually want you to be in this place of just pure receiving. It's a very different energy for you to be in that.
So fun.
Whereas
So new.
when you're cooking, like, I'd rather put your focus on how much fun you're having. I then can do all of the other things, like setting the table, making sure the light's right, getting the candles, music, make sure the drinks are set, all these other periphery things. And so I feel like that's a really good model and example of where I provide the container for you to do this kind of like flowy arty thing, which is the cooking.
Yeah.
And then, that we're able to stay in our respective polarity within that.
Very well said. And that's been a really big change, and something that I've only experienced maybe once or twice on a special occasion with somebody hosting me for dinner. Even in other people's homes, there's always that feeling to assist or help. And so what it is to just be instructed, but now I don't even need instruction. But I will say something that one of the number one complaints I hear from my clients, especially when telling any story about Eric cooking, they will express with this great sarcasm and actually really kind of a nasty tone, have my man cook dinner? No way, that's not worth it, because I'm going to have to teach him absolutely everything, where everything goes. It's way more work. And I can recognize moments in our life where he says, where is the fill in the blank? And I'll say, oh, it's too hard to describe to you. Let me just get up and find it. I've learned that since I am in this relationship and I'm committed and I'm here for our growth and for our sustainability, that I am really in my dishonesty if I don't go through that discomfort, or the annoyance, or the patience and the compassion that it takes to slowly share my resources, my competency, and the instructions that I have gathered in my lifetime of having experiences. And it's emotional for me because I see him getting out his phone to either take notes or to awkwardly film me. But I see what he's doing is he's working towards precision. Maybe I'm making a taco seasoning and he says, show me how to do this time so that you don't have to do that again. He takes notes when I'm speaking about exactly how I need, for example, a package mailed. And it's been powerful to see him do this due diligence and be in the humility and the discomfort to be able to say, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how she has done this in the past, and I am here to learn from this person who has experience here. It doesn't mean that my way is better. It doesn't mean that my way is the way. It's just information for him to gather, to learn more essentially about me, and to learn more about my nuances and my fears and how much I've actually carried over the years, how much I actually do, and how many decisions I make during the day. This is an experiment we did together for several months. Every time I felt myself making a decision, I would become aware that I'm making that decision. And if it took longer than 15 seconds, I would outsource it to him, not to make the decision for me, but I would express it and share it out loud and hear myself ruminate so that he could hear my internal thinking process, so that he could kind of see what it is that I go through. And then he brought logic and brought contextual awareness to that decision, and I could immediately feel in my body the yes and the wisdom in that moment, instead of me going into all my different machinations of processing and analyzing. So how Eric has continued to learn more about me, how he could do better for our relationship in general, that there's meticulous care that men have been conditioned to skip over. Why? Because women tend to do it for them. That actually makes the women not trust our men to do the tasks. The men are not taking notes. This meticulous really matters for me to be able to feel completely seen. And this is not my dominant energy saying my way or the highway. This is about Eric caring about my details. Women tend to be the ones who hold the details of life. So this complaint about these women when they're bitchy saying, yeah, it'd be fucking nice if my husband picked up the kids from school, they're upset because men aren't really taking the time, but women aren't taking the time either. No one is really willing to make that discomfort be the priority, to make that crossover, to go through the practice, and that he will mess up the taco seasoning. He will go a different route that is less efficient, but maybe more beautiful on the way to the post office. This, for us, was a year of practice for us to get good at the things that I had done as a solo person my whole life. And when I thought about it, women teach something to men one time, and if they don't do it right, then that's it. They've given up. And it is uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable to watch Eric do things differently from me. It's uncomfortable to see him awkward, or he's slow, or it burns, or whatever that is. But as long as we're not dealing with a life-threatening example, it's powerful for me to be able to keep witnessing him in his care and in his desire to be better. Why? So that I can be in my relaxed state. And we are transferring the role of responsibility, of power, of task, where it's been invisible, over to him in a way that he is so much more able to hold that and get energy from it, instead of me who feels tired from
This is
holding so much.
a big part of when I'm good at something, I gain energy from being good at it. So testosterone, competency, like if I'm competent at something, I'm rejuvenated by it. I remember looking around at you when we were first together and you were doing so well. And I just thought you enjoyed doing it all. I just thought you got great energy. You were great. It was completely anathema to me that you would not enjoy doing the things that you were good at. And that so much of what you did, you were good at just to be more efficient at it and had no corollary to actual enjoyment. And that you actually were dying for me to do some of it or for other people to do it. But your composure, your capacity to do it with grace, there was no indication that there was any pain until I looked further and I'm like, oh, you have chronic headaches, you have chronic trigeminal neuralgia, you have all these different issues. Hey, maybe there's a relationship between being such a massive people pleaser and your chronic illness. And I started doing this work, but it's a respect to you. It's a way of showing my love and my respect for all that you've done. And I'm taking the time to pay attention to how you've done it. It doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to do it your way, but it's respectful to that. And then if I decide to do it another way, then I'm going to do it after I've already learned it. If I just go in and I just do it my way, ignoring you, it seems a little disrespectful. I'm not really honoring all the work that you've done up to that point. There's an arrogance in that. I think it's also an emotional attunement to you and a way of honoring all that you've done. And I have to take away efficiency. I'm always thinking about what's the long-term benefit. Over time, it will be more efficient, but in the short term, we're going to lose efficiency. And that's part of the RX model that we talked about before. I'm always looking for what's healthiest for us for the long term. And we start becoming that.
We're serving love itself.
Exactly. And I'm becoming more aware of your emotions. And even if there's some judgment over the way that you've done it, or I think it's kind of absurd or ridiculous at first, be just beginner's mind, learn from it. It's incredible what I've learned and been able to do. And then I can choose and say, hey, I'm going to do this. We're going to hire someone to do that. You're not going to do that. But at least I have an awareness, just like on a job site. If I've done a little bit of everything, I know how to streamline everything a lot better. If I know the traditional way of building something, then I can do things in an unconventional way. And I'm not going to lose sight of the things that are foundational to the situation. And so many men are interested in the surface part of this. They don't recognize the long term, that I'm actually gaining your respect. I'm respecting you and considering your way. But I'm never ending there. I'm always going to see what's the best way to do it. I'm making decisions that are much more holistic, and I'm considering you from that. And I think that feels so much better to you and to me. And we've seen it play out because we've been doing this for years. And it feels much better and juicier on this.
It does. Like being considered as parallel to the way that I feel into my preferences, that I can recognize a request or a piece of information versus a preference or wanting to be in control. That question that was gifted to us in the beginning was, do I really want to be in the achievement of my preferences or my wants or desires, that I have to get what I want? Or do I really want to achieve polarity? This was really powerful for me to see, because I can express my preferences. Because if I don't, you'll never know me. You'll never know the details of who I am or what it is that I crave or what I like. But do I have to get my preferences? Does every single need have to be met? Do I have to have it my way? I see so many feminine beings being in their spoiled energy. I always think of Baruka from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That idea of, I want to have it my way, or do I want to, in the long term, much like Eric is holding this long-term vision for the relationship, I'm giving up maybe getting my way or having it done in the exact order of operation that I used to do it in favor of him really holding the container and taking us on a journey. this spoiled energy is happening inside of the feminine being because we've been taking care of ourselves our whole life, because we are the ones who hold our preferences. We've never shared what we actually like with anyone. So we're always able to get our own way when we're the ones being the caretakers of everyone else, but also of ourselves.
Well, and I think part of the issue that underlies all this is why we have to take a little more extreme version and a habit of having the masculine ultimately be in charge of the relationship and having this polarity, because this can easily fall into a slippery slope where the woman expresses her desires, her needs, and then I'm just trying to please you and trying to make you happy, rather than me learning to be discerning, where I'm able to see your depletion and know what to do with it and to communicate that. And also to know my depletion. I have to become really aware of my own needs too, because if I'm overly sacrificing in this endeavor, or if I'm needing some support from you, then I have to frame this and say, hey, I'm feeling a lot right here. I'm going to need you to do this thing. And I'm seeing the feel. I'm not just considering you, but I'm also really taking care of me. It's been really powerful when I do that. I think also seeing all the invisible responsibilities from you and me starting to take them on, and then I'm able to take inspired action, and there's not as much resistance or avoidance. And I think especially because I'm doing it not because you're telling me to do it, or not because of some sort of application, it feels like I'm conquering, I'm winning, it feels bountiful. And I'm not doing these things so that I can put you in a sexual place or to get sex, but that's always what's inevitable. So many men are lethargic when they're meeting their domestic responsibility. But if I can reframe it and bring a more buoyant, positive energy, and I can do it from a place of inspired action instead of having any resistance or any avoidance, I get a woman who's not in resistance or avoidance in her sex or at the end of the night. And there's a corollary between the two. And it has to be authentic, and it can't be a giving to get kind of energy either.
If the woman is in a flurry of activity, she's going to be static and shut down in the bedroom, in the intimate side of their life.
I have to have an energy with no resistance, because remember, pain times resistance equals suffering. If a woman feels that I'm suffering in the work that I'm doing, she's not going to give me the work, and she's not going to receive the gift of my work. So it's not just a matter of me doing the work. It's also me not resisting the work. I've thought so much about the monks and the different holy traditions where work is a joy. Or the Zen. Zen's a great example in Japan. The act of doing these things, there's great joy in that. I think that's done more for our sex life, is the energy with which I do work. And so I have to be able to be aware of her, that she's masking a lot of that pain. I'm able to feel her so much more, and she becomes so much more fertile in this process. And I think of this whole thing as really, truly a big art project.
I love that point of view, choosing your discomforts, that you ultimately have a choice in each one of these moments. So discomfort then is not a victim state, it's a conscious choice where we can choose the difficulties in the relationship that lead to growth for us both. For example, with television and our passwords and different apps, I know I'm not alone in feeling frustrated. It was powerful when he, once upon a time, said, "Give me that remote. You're no longer doing this. I'm in charge of the TV." And it was uncomfortable as hell because his glasses don't work. It's short and long, and he's awkward, and the remote is hard, and it was dark in the room. And I just kept squirming and squirming. It was actually really horrible for me to feel. But ultimately, in the long term, since that's what I'm committed to, it is so much better. He is so competent to do absolutely anything. And so between two shitty choices, I'm either going to squirm watching him learn a new skill and be in his discomfort for a moment, or I'm going to be rage-filled and want to throw the remote at the television because I've been doing this my whole life and I'm so frustrated I don't know any of the passwords. Between those two, which one is the obvious choice? And it's amazing to feel into that and really notice that I am choosing that discomfort. But ultimately, Eric is choosing it for me by saying, here, please give that to me. This is going to be awkward. I will learn eventually. I'm super good at stuff. And ultimately, what that is a delayed gratification. We're building a system that will be uncomfortable in the moment, but for our long-term sustainability and ultimately for the health of our love and our relationship, it is so powerful that this shared luxury of creating abundance through discipline, not avoidance, is profound. It is discipline for me to be in my discomfort, to go inside a hotel room and, as he says, take off your clothes, get in bed, lay in that beam of sunshine while I unpack. I'll make the drinks, I'll heat up the dinner, I'll take care of you. I can feel that guilt creep in, but with his guidance, I'm really able to witness the guilt and settle in and watch it be present and dissipate. So that discipline that he has is for him to do more work at the end of a hard day. But ultimately, what that ends up with is a beautiful night that we share together.
It reminds me of the quote, though, from an artist that I really respect. Her name's Andrea Zittel, and she says, in order for us to have freedom, we have to pick and choose our constraints. And we often think artists is about getting rid of constraints, but the freedom as an artist is in choosing our restraints. So to me, it's about choosing our pain. We can choose the way we respond to it. And I think about what I've done deep dive into trauma and my own experience with trauma. It's not about what happened, but it's about because there was a lack of empathy, a lack of someone there with you after the trauma. There was no one there to give meaning to it, to hold space for you in that. If something bad happens and somebody's immediately there to receive you and give you empathy, you're not going to necessarily have that PTSD. I think a lot of women go through their day where they're having trauma, they're having difficulties, they're having challenges with their kids. And then the man comes home and there's no awareness, there's no consciousness that they've had a hard day. And the man's just all about him having a hard day. And so it just sort of reinforces what pain it is to be a woman and for women to feel that there's this inevitable burden. And so much what a woman wants is empathy for her day and for her existence. And one of the best ways to have empathy for someone is to actually get in their shoes and start doing the work and feeling the work and feeling what she's gone through. You're going to have inevitable empathy for that. It's something that happened long ago when we didn't get empathy. We're still in the pain from that, looking backwards. And I think this is where frame and container and all these things are really important. Container and the frame is something that we can apply to things in the past, to things in the present, to things in the future, that we get to choose how we want to frame those things.
And because men who are working hard all day and they're coming home, then they are also wanting to be appreciated. And so there's this competition between the two person, and it's ancient, but a couple can identify where we're avoiding pain that our partner is carrying. Where are we tiptoeing? Where are we being polite or nonchalant or casual, cool, calm, and collected? Because in that cool, calm, and collected, we come off as unattached or unaffected. Eric wants to have an impact on my life. He wants to be a provider and a protector. But if I'm just cool, he cannot feel me. He cannot feel my pain. And therefore, I get that wonderful feedback that I'm robotic. And it's so accurate. I actually really have loved that part of myself for so long, but not anymore. So when we can, as a couple, choose to feel really one area to be impacted by a choice where we're going to choose a discomfort. Choose something that is present, where you can lean into that to see and feel the impact, where you're designing a system together, where you're committing to use the discomfort or the pain as a fuel, as a motivator. That fuel for her is into inaction, being wider and deeper, more supple. For him, it's a fuel into action, to be more erect and to go further within that system, to be highly activated, and to have a composure or that willingness to bring a different frame to it is very powerful. How our men then converting those challenges into the fuel or the motivation by witnessing the mirror of their woman and the way that she is bringing data or information to him. Because relationships are a commitment to constant adjustment. And I see Eric doing that all the time. Seeing things as an experiment is powerful because experiments are designed to potentially fail, potentially succeed. And so you come at it from a place of foolishness and play, that it doesn't need an outcome and it doesn't need perfection.
Yeah, I think that's the big delineation between a boy and a man. Is the boy is always looking to be unburdened and to get rid of responsibility and to have somebody else take care of him. And the man is looking around being like, hey, what else can I do? How else can I be of service? And I think the word that I want to always leave you with is it's creative. It's a creative opportunity. Be creative about it. Don't feel burdened by it.
The conscious dominant energy says your struggle is information about where I need to grow. And I hear Eric saying to me all the time that my needs are never an inconvenience or a burden to him, that they're really invitations to become the man that this relationship requires for stability and for health.
Yeah, and again, that's regeneration. I mean, that's the whole point. That's when I say it's one of the pillars, is that we take the things that are like the death moments or the pain, and we transform them into something. Thank you for being with us through this. I think it'd be great this week if you guys could, anybody listening, pick one thing to do, one contract, one habit that we have, one area where we can choose to bring a little bit more conscious discomfort to it and a little less unconscious comfort. Because wherever you have unconscious comfort, you have unconscious discomfort that you're avoiding. Let's transform the unconscious comfort into conscious discomfort and know and trust that that's going to also transform your relationship when it's done.
Beautiful. And when you can practice that when guilt shows up around receiving, to feel it fully and receive anyway. Just kind of watch it over time dissipate. And of course, there's deeper practices around that. But this is really how that old programming dissolves.
Connect with us at DSRX Studio on Instagram. Also a link in the bio for our mailing list. And we got some cool weekly insights. And also follow Arosha over on IG at Arosha. Also, please check out free resources at arosha.art. And don't forget to email us anytime with episode requests, topics, and appreciate everyone for listening. The art of conscious relationship is learnable. It just requires practice. It's a lot of fun. Be patient. And we're here till next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.